Hello, hope everybody's doing well this week. Today I would like to cover processing a sunrise or sunset and some of the problems that we have when we shoot a sunrise or sunset is usually sun flare or lens flare and sensor spots. So we're looking at a picture that I took on sunrise back in June of 2019 at Crater Lake. Uh, I have my f-stop down to f18. I'm shooting at an ISO 100 so I can get a lot of fine features in when shooting at f18. Now when we shoot at a high f-stop, we're doing it primarily so we can get the sun rays of the sun as it pops over the horizon. That's the good effect that we can get from using a high f-stop. The bad thing is we get diffraction, which means that we don't have a real sharp focus around the edges. We get lens flare, as you can see here. And as we increase our f-stop, any sensor dust we have becomes very apparent in our photos. So that's what I want to cover today. How do we process the picture of the sun that's just staring us in the face and it's just creating a white spot right in the center of our picture? And how do we clean up some of these things that we find when we use a high f-stop? So to start out, like I do with all my pictures, we're going to go to Lens Correction in Lightroom, remove Chromatic Aberration, and enable the profile for the lens. Then I'm going to go up to Basic, and I'm going to hit Auto, and let Lightroom do its thing, try to figure out the best settings. And it looks like it did pretty good. I'm not going to fiddle with this very much. I might bring the shadows up a little bit more to get some more light on the foreground. But that'd be about it. It's good enough to work with for now. The next thing we're going to do is that we want to tone down the sky a little bit. I shot it at an exposure to get the sun and some of the background lit up. I mean the foreground. And to do that, we lost some of our color and darkness in the sky. So to fix that, we're going to use a linear gradient. So let's go over to our masking icon and choose linear gradient. And before we start dragging, I want you to hold your shift key down. When we hold our shift key down, it makes the gradient that we pull down on to be perfectly level. All right? So as we click and pull down, you see how no matter how I've moved my mouse, it's going to keep it at right angles. If we didn't have that and drag down, then we would be moving it incrementally like this. We don't want that. We want it to be perfectly straight, and the best way to do that is to hold our shift key. All right. So we choose our linear gradient, we hold our shift key down, and we drag and bring the sun right above the middle line. The middle line is where we have 50% of our effect all the way to 100% at the top. All right. So we have this in place. We might stretch out our gradient even a little further so we can get the sun slowly building up as it hits the mountains. And then we're going to take the exposure and turn it down a little bit. We're going to grab the temperature and make it just a little bit bluer. Or keep it just like that. And of course, as I bring the exposure down, these spots are really starting to show up. So we'll have to be sure and clean those up when we're through. The next thing we want to do is we want to attack the sun. We don't want this big bright blob right in the center of our picture. It just doesn't make the picture look like the sunrise that I knew it was. It wasn't just a big white spot, but the sensor saw all that light and made a white spot in there. So let's tone that down. And to do that, we're going to create a new mask, radial. We're going to hold our shift key down, and we're doing that again. When we hold our shift key down on a radial, we create a perfect circle. All right. If we don't hold the shift key down, we get, little oblongs to circles. The center is our filter, our gradient filter. So this is when we have very little gradient. We're just dragging the center circle all the way to a big feather and a large gradient. Right? So we want the gradient center to be about the size of the sun. Holding our shift key down, we're going to make it about this size. Bring it in place, and we'll make our center gradient about the size of the sun right there. The rest goes around the sun, Just about like that. Alright, what we want to do now is we want to turn the highlights down just a little bit. We want to turn the exposure down just a little bit. And we want to move our clarity down to about 28 or around 30. And just a little bit of dehaze to soften it up. Alright, let's do that again. We're going to make a new gradient. It's going to be a radial gradient. Holding our shift key down. We're going to make one a little bigger. Out like this. Again, we're going to bring the highlights down just a little bit. We're going to, it's too much. We can start to see a ring. We're going to bring down the clarity. And we're going to bring down the dehaze. You can see we're starting to get a little glow there. Let's grab another radial gradient, holding our shift key down. We're going to make one a little bigger. Make this just a little bit bigger than the sun. Alright, we're going to grab the clarity and bring it down a little bit. We're going to grab the dehaze and bring that down a little bit till you get to about where you like it. You can see you can get nuts with it, so we don't want to get too bad. About right there. I think we might be able to use one more, so let's create a new mask. Radial gradient. Make this one a little bigger. We're going to grab the clarity, bring that down a little bit, and dehaze, bring that in just a little bit like that. Alright, so now we don't have this big white spot staring us in the face. Now we have the sun with the sun rays and a nice glow that the sun brings in when it tops the horizon. If we look at our before and our after, before and our after. See how much better the effect of the sun gets? We actually start seeing more of the rays up here than we saw before because they were kind of burned out because of the brightness. But now we can see it's coming all the way around. Alright, so now that we have our sun in place, we can start to get rid of some of these spots. Now there is a tool to use in Lightroom, and it's right here. It's the healing tool. And you can clone or heal. But what it's doing, you would then click on a spot, and it's grabbing an area adjacent to the spot and covers it. And sometimes that works good. It worked good for that one. Let's go back and put another one on. But in some areas, it's just not quite good enough. So if we were to grab one here, and let's say we look at this spot right here, it doesn't have the ability to do as well because you can actually see a little ring around the area that it cleared, and it actually grabbed part of the mountain there. So I'm going to undo that. And we are going to go into Photoshop, which is infinitely better in cleaning up spots than Lightroom is. So we're going to go to Photo, Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Alright, here we are in Photoshop. Now we're going to start working on these spots, and we'll try to clear up some of these sun flares. And we have several techniques. We'll give them a try. The first thing I do is I click on my background and I hit Command J. What that does, it creates a second layer. Because remember, Photoshop is a destructive process. Once I make a change on here, it's there on the photo itself. It's not like Lightroom. Lightroom makes a separate file so it can keep track of the original and only make metadata changes on the copy. So to kind of simulate the same thing, we leave the background alone and we look at our layer. Okay, the first thing we're going to use is our healing tool, spot healing. And all this is going to do is grab the layers around, or the photo around the spot, and try to figure out, almost like content aware, and that's what it's using, to see how it can color that spot. So let's zoom in a little bit. And we'll put our circle over the spot. If we hold our mouse button down here, you can see we're on Spot Healing Tool, and we just click. Does a really good job on dust spots. probably spend all day doing this here because there's so much to clean up. So on a spot oblong like this, you're just going to drag across the whole spot like that. Right? That's really the better tool to use is in Photoshop using the spot healing tool. Alright, here we have an oblong one here. Let's see how this one works. Pretty good. Okay, in this area we might have a little problem because of the sun flare. So if I spot heal this, looks pretty good. You could also use the content aware tool, and I'll see that one didn't look as good. There we go. Let's try this one here. Make our brush a little bigger. We use our bracket key to make it bigger, and then bracket key to make it smaller. Doesn't really look that good. Let's undo, Control Z, and we could try our content aware tool by circling, going to edit, content aware fill. It's going to bring up the tool. It looks pretty good. We'll say OK. Got rid of that. Alright, the next area we want to tackle is this area on the rock. And to do this, we're going to use the patch tool. Alright, so if we come up here, we were using spot healing. Now we're going to use the patch tool. We want to go over to our layers and make sure we're on a pixel layer. So we want to click layer 1. A pixel layer is a layer that contains the pixels or the color of the photograph. This layer was our content aware layer, so the change we made there is on that layer. We want to be on a pixel layer. Now we want to circle the area that we want to correct, and then we want to drag it to an area that's very similar to what we want to replace it with. So let's drag our little circle over to this area here. Say like right down here, and let go. And what it does, it samples that area, kind of like content aware fill, and fills it in. Now if we hit Command D or Control D on a PC, it gets rid of our marching ants, and you can see perfect change. Alright, I'm not going to tackle this one because it's across here. There is a way we can do it. It's called frequency and color cloning, but that's a subject for another day. The last one right here, it's just a little light one, and we have one here. We could try the patch tool on this one. Let's see how well it works. Might be too complex. We'll drag it to an area like this, and hit Control D. Well, pretty good, pretty good. This one will probably be better if we were to just do our spot healing. Let's see what we get here with our spot healing. Make our bracket about the size of the spot. And it looks like we get that one pretty good. So between our spot healing, our content aware fill, and our patch tool, we pretty much cleaned this up the way we wanted it to look. After we have everything the way we want in Photoshop, we want to go back up to File and Save. And what it will do now is it will save the file and drop it back into Lightroom. So you can see we're back in Lightroom now. This is the picture that we worked on in Photoshop. Here's the picture originally before we sent it to Photoshop. You can see our sunspots, you can see our dust spots, and then let's look at the picture from Photoshop. Most of our spots are gone, most of our sensor spots are gone, and we have a really nice looking sun. If we go to the original one here with the sun changes, even though we have these spots here, if we hit before, after, let's take the masking off and look at our before after there. We have a lot more detail in our sky. We have a sun that actually looks kind of pleasing to the eye instead of a big white spot glaring us down. And then once we fix it up, You can see that we have all our spots pretty much cleaned up, and it's a nice sunrise picture at Crater Lake. I hope this helps everybody out. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be glad to help you out anytime. Thanks.